So yesterday I made a video about Yoru and Harbor and my hopes and dreams of this little meme combo coming together and being this kind of wild fantasy land of these two bad agents. But I'm here to basically douse those flames very, very quickly because I'm here to say that I don't think that Yoru will ever have a high pro pick rate. This is outside of the very niche case scenario that is very unlikely to happen, that Riot buffed Yoru to the absolute moon and made him the best agent in the game. Obviously, if that happened, okay, Yoru might have a pretty high pick rate. But outside of that unlikely, case scenario happening, I don't think that Yoru will ever really see a lot of pro pick rate. And actually, it can start to explain what I'm going to talk about today, why certain agents do get more pick rate than you might think that they should, and why some agents maybe get a bit less than you think that they should as well. And no, this is not to do with the strength of the agent either, because yes, Yoru is pretty weak right now and was Champs 2022, sitting at a 1% pick rate overall, right? Pretty sad. We'd all love to see more Yoru and whatnot. I'm sure we all would. And I'm sure you're all thinking, well, he's not very good at the moment, right? Maybe he doesn't fit the current map pool that well. Maybe there just isn't enough agents that he synergizes well with to make picking Yoru worth it, right? That must be all of the reasons why he's not getting picked. And that, honestly, at the moment, probably is true, right? All of those things might be pretty true as well. But I think there is another big issue that even if Yoru was a decent agent, let's say Yoru you thought was a pretty solid B to A tier agent, and probably deserved maybe somewhere in here, right? Kind of a mid-20s pick rate. I even think then he wouldn't quite achieve that, right? And he would always be below what you might expect depending on the relative strength of Yoru. And the key reason for all of this is time, because Yoru takes a lot of time, and there is currently 7 maps, and there will be probably going on from now. There will always be 7 maps in the rotation of the Valorant pool, and no matter if those maps are good for Yoru or bad for Yoru, he's always going to take some time, right? When we're playing Yoru, you have to have some pretty good combos set up. You need to have some good positions for those gate crashes to be in. We've seen teams try Yoru and, have to develop very specific, very weird perhaps plans around that Yoru and really build the whole kind of thing around a Yoru going in, right? We saw Paper Rex on Bind, do some really interesting, weird, wacky stuff going in, but that would have taken them quite a bit of time to develop that bind, right? And when we're looking at a map pool like there is currently in Valorant, where there's 7 different maps, pro teams, as the meta is developing all the time and new agents are coming out and maybe even a new map is coming out that you need to work on as well, you just don't have enough time to, come up with all these crazy ideas for 7 different maps, right? And I do say 7 because, of course, a lot of the best teams in the world, or at least, quite a few of them now, don't really have a perma-ban map. Some teams might lean away from kind of the new map, whatever that is, and kind of wait for a meta to settle on it. But as soon as you start to see that meta settle on a map, most teams now, after FPX kind of showed their success with that formula, I think are pretty open to having a 7-map pool and, trying to pick based off their opponent rather than having a permaban map, which might limit them in some other areas. So as a pro team, we're trying to play 7 whole maps. And you just don't have the time to, come up with a ton of different ideas for all these different maps. It's just not going to be possible, to be honest, right? You're gonna need to just basically pick the meta comp on some of them. You might have time to develop your own kind of unique twist on some of the maps, right? Some of those maps that you feel very confident on and your team feels good on, yeah, you might be able to do a Paper Rex bind where you go kind of crazy with it, right? You might be able to do that. But on all of the other maps, it's gonna be pretty tricky, and you're probably gonna have to, just default into some pretty standard stuff overall and not push the boat too much, because otherwise you're just not gonna have enough time to develop those ideas and come in with those ideas appropriately. And this doesn't just apply to Yoru either, because I think there is another agent that really kind of fits that, and that is Cipher. Because even with the Cipher buffs that will be upcoming in the next patch, I still don't see that Cipher, and look, I think Cipher will be like a B tier agent at that point, but I still don't think his pick rate will increase that much, and you might say that part of that will be due to Chamber, and I think that that is true. But even so, I don't think that Cipher, even if he was buffed, to the moon, again, I don't think Cipher would have as much pick rate as Chamber, and again, it's to do with that time aspect, that to play Cipher well, in my opinion, or to get a ton of value from Cipher, you need to have, quite a few different setups that can work, right? You need to have, quite a few different trip locations and camera locations, and all these different setups around the map. And that takes time to develop and know what is a good setup, right? And you're going to have to put in that server time. And if you want to do that for every single map, again, that is going to take a lot of time. Sure, maybe you can find, those areas on 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 maps, but you're not going to be able to do it for all 7. It's just going to take too long overall to find, good Cipher cage one-ways, good cameras, good trips across the entire map. You'd rather be focusing on other things. But this time effect can also have the inverse effect as well, where for an agent like Chamber, it's kind of the inverse, right? Where with Chamber, it probably takes you 10 minutes on each map to find enough, good setups or good place to place the teleporters and where a trip might go, and you're done, right? That's it. You're done. You can now play Chamber on that map, and he's already integrated into what you want to do on that map. He's a very, very simple agent to build around, and I do think that that is part of the reason why Chamber, is so meta even after all the nerfs or whatever. And I know he's still very, very strong and needs further nerfs, but even if he got those further nerfs, we still might see a bit of a Chamber lasting impact because he's nice and simple, right? Because he can just be put in and slot in pretty much straight away, and you can probably watch one VOD of Ye playing Chamber and just copy all of his ideas and you're done, right? One VOD and all your ideas for a map are just there for you right there, and all you've done is maybe copy Ye, right? That is very, very simple. Whereas, as I say, for an agent like a Cipher or a Yoru, that is not going to be the case. You're going to need to build around and that entire agent and try and figure out how you want to make that agent work. And that is going to be much more tricky than something like Chamber, where you can just go, oh yeah, I'll just put a rendezvous here, I'll put one there, and away we go. And so when we're thinking about agents and their pick rates and whether the pro meta is appropriately valuing each of these agents correctly or whatnot, one of the key reasons we might need to think about is this agent complex to play? Do they need a lot of time put into them to make them work? Because if the answer is yes, and you might also want to add Harbor into that mix, right? Where his wall is an ability, his E ability is one that will probably take a lot of time to master. There's a lot of different things and a lot of different ideas that you could come up with that wall. That is going to take time, right? So again, that is just kind of another knock against agents like Harbor, Yoru, Cipher, where if they do take more time overall to master and come up with enough appropriate uses for them, then they're probably gonna be picked less overall than the simple agents, because pro teams just don't have enough time to come up with a bunch of crazy ideas for a whole 7 map pool. At some point you're probably just gonna have to stick with what you've got and stick to what and stick with something that's pretty simple for a majority of the maps, because you're just not gonna have the time to put in that prep work necessary to make agents like Harbor or Yoru or even Cipher perhaps work consistently.